Hello and welcome back to the Noble Fury podcast. We have a crazy cool topic today. 2024, what happened that stands out? For me, quickly, Jeff, I'm putting aside the economy, the border, public safety, and transgender athletes. Those are huge.
Well, you sound like core CPI, where they exclude everything that matters.
Oh, that's another podcast, darn you.
Yeah, all right.
So I'm going to get right into my list. Top five, my top five, your top five. One of them, oddly enough, Taylor Swift.
Okay.
I'm not a huge fan of Taylor Swift. She's the first musician to be a billionaire. She's generated at least $1 billion in income from her songs and albums alone. That is a crazy accomplishment. That's something.
And when you say albums, truly, these are in many cases vinyl albums nowadays.
Yeah. Well, actually, correction. Songs and concerts from her tour.
Yeah.
Songs being albums, but from her songs and her concerts alone, she generated $1 billion or more.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah, that's something that not too many. There's a lot of big bands and they generate a lot of income. So that was my number five, Taylor Swift, the circus that was the Taylor Swift concert.
Well, it's interesting that you chose that. We went to go see Taylor Swift. My 13-year-old daughter was very interested in seeing Taylor Swift. She's a Swiftie. And so we went to Indianapolis and saw her in one of her last concerts in the United States for the Eras Tour. I liked it a lot.
Entertaining.
I'm not a Swiftie, but I found it very entertaining.
You strike me as a Swiftie. You're sort of the demographic.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I know.
It's shocking.
Right. So my
number five,
and we're counting down, right? Our rank is from lowest to highest. Okay. So number five for me, the Supreme Court dealt a serious blow to the administrative state this year. So there were three cases really, that combined reduced a great deal of administrative state power, inherent power. So there's
a breath of fresh air.
It's going to be some relief for a lot of businesses and a lot of people. So basically, since 1984, there's been a doctrine called Chevron deference. Mm-hmm. And the Chevron deference was...
precedents. Right?
It is a Supreme Court precedent and just overturned this summer. So what Supreme Court did was in 1984, they wanted to create an exception to the court's reviewable, their ability to review cases based on interpretation that an administrative state department would have natural authority or expertise in conducting.
How the Supreme Court interprets, in essence, right?
No. This isn't about the Supreme Court. This is about the Supreme Court restricted what lower federal courts.
Right. Supreme Court ruled on how lower courts can interpret and apply the law.
And so the Chevron doctrine was essentially a two-part test, and it forced courts to have to defer to the rule interpretation for an ambiguous bit of statute or regulation that needed to be interpreted, and the courts couldn't step in and interpret it. So if I sued the FDA because of I thought that a regulation was not being interpreted correctly, well, the interpretation that the FDA provided itself could not be subject to
interesting
courts opening that up and interpreting it.
Why does that seem so reasonable?
So
in the light of day, that seems like a pretty reasonable approach.
Well,
the new
approach, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, so the idea is that since Marbury versus Madison, judicial review, that case stood for the federal court's ability to review federal law. That Chevron deference doctrine put a pretty big kink in that in terms of certain ambiguous terms.
Chevron, is it the oil company Chevron? Is it the
yes, and it was
about
in that case dealt with the environment and the EPA and the release.
Sounds messy. Sounds messy. Gas companies and the environment.
Believe it or not, that whole case hangs on what does source of emissions, the source of emissions mean. And the FDA, the EPA decided that it involved a reduction of emissions at a factory. And instead of being the whole factory, it was one part of the factory. But that led into the whole development of this case.
All right. So you're setting us up for another longer podcast about Chevron.
This one's going to be 2 hours long,
yeah, exactly.
right?
All right. I'm going to my number 4.
Okay.
Number 4 is, listen, AI is not new, but AI has really started. Of course, it's accelerated. It's happening in real time, minute to minute. AI becoming more advanced, but ChatGPT's new version, GPT-4, it really is next level. It's a whole new gambit of opportunity and technology and the applications and the success of AI. By the way, I think it's incredible that Apple's got Apple Intelligence, AI. What a fascinating, crazy opportunity for Apple to have AI and then have it stand for Apple Intelligence.
Are you jonesing for an Apple sponsorship?
I'm jonesing for an Apple.
Chair?
An Apple. I'd like to just crunch into a big Macintosh. But anyway, bottom line is, number 4 on my list is the evolving story of AI and the newest version of ChatGPT, GPT-4.
My number 4, North Korea sent 10,000 troops to assist Russia in warfare against Ukrainians. Now, they didn't just give them 10,000.
A story that really didn't bubble up much for how big it was.
Early November, I think this is
but
when
a
we first learned
story,
of it.
significant
it's a huge
story on the world.
So the reason that I think it's such an important event of the year that's on my list is that these troops are being used in the most dangerous area of the Ukraine battle, the Ukraine warfare, the theater of warfare. And so they're pretty much being used as expendable pieces. So Kim Jong-un, in doing this, is almost putting together a reformation of the axis of evil powers that we saw during World War II. Putin himself has wanted for some time to move back into a Cold War posture with the West, and this may be one of his strategies, one gambit in achieving that end. So I'd say that this is a high watch. It's not made a lot of attention right now. It got a lot of attention at the moment, but this is potentially the beginning of either a new Cold War or World War III, something to look out for.
Well, and the dictator in North Korea, dictator Kim, is always looking to put himself on this world stage, and he wants to be he wants to run in that circle, and looking for the garnering respect. And he certainly has found a bedfellow in Putin. So, all right, moving to my number 3. I don't know if I can use the word unprecedented or not. I feel like I can. The unprecedented pardoning of Hunter Biden by Joe Biden, and the insidious.
That's a good one.
Well, Hunter Biden was up for, it wasn't just the pardon itself. When you parse through the pardon, the language of the pardon, you find 2 crazy things. One, Hunter Biden was up for 12 different counts, 12 counts ranging from tax evasion and the gun charges. Let's not even bring up the laptop. But the bigger thing, the sneakier thing, was that really Joe Biden appears to have pardoned himself. Of course, the evidence that Hunter Biden has now been forgiven for really involved Joe Biden and the Biden family. So the insidious nature of the pardon runs miles deeper than the surface of just a pardon. And by the way, some of the pardons that Joe Biden pardoned a black widow that had been convicted of killing 3 different lovers. He also pardoned a judge that was sentencing kids to a juvie detention home that was getting a kickback from the juvie home. So he was, in essence, the allegations were that he was sentencing these kids for the sole reason of getting the kickback from the detention center.
It was good for business.
I mean, crazy. He ruined these kids' lives who were already struggling, and Joe Biden found this judge, this corrupt judge, corrupt to the core, worthy of a pardon. So Joe Biden's crazy list of pardons, starting with Hunter Biden, is my number 3.
Wow. Okay. So
by the way, one last thing. So sorry. Hunter Biden was up for 42 years.
No, was it Nobel Prize?
42 years, potentially 42 years of all the charges. He could have got 42 years in prison, and to wipe that clean with your own, sorry, it just seems really significant. Apologies.
No, it is. I agree. So on a little bit more of an upbeat technological
Please take us there.
So my number 3 is FDA this year, this autumn, approved, expedited approval for an immunotherapy.
I thought you were going to say red dye number 3 being banned.
No,
Please.
Immunotherapy treatment for what's called synovial carcinoma. It's a type of solid tumor cancer. And so this new technology.
Did you say upbeat? Now you're talking about cancer? Oh, you mean
this is actually, it has very good response rate against these cancers. So good, in fact, that the FDA sped up the approval process because of the high success rate. There's almost no side effects for this treatment. What they do is they take your own immune cells, your white blood cells, and they genetically alter your T cells such that they have a receptor site that they can attach to on the synovial carcinoma. And those cells go in, grab hold, and start killing off. T cells are your immune system's killer cells. That's the first line of attack. They attack the solid tumors and reduce or eliminate the cancer. And in fact, it was a small sample. I think they did an experiment with 44 or 48 people, but about half of them had significant reductions in their tumor size, and some of them had complete elimination of the tumors in their bodies after this treatment.
A potential layman's takeaway would be, and I hope I'm not oversimplifying, let the human immune system do everything it can on its own, engage it, initiate it.
Yeah.
Right.
This is a little help, right? And
Sure.
Sort of a little kickstart to your immune system so that it knows how to attach to the bad guy in your body.
Yeah,
and
cool.
what's nice about this technology is in version 2 that they're working on right now, they've branched out beyond just synovial carcinoma, and they're working on other cancers like esophageal cancer, lots of other solid form cancers.
I guess can you make a joke about cancer? If you can, I'm going to. Unfortunately, it's $1 million per treatment, and nobody can afford it. And the government the government's going to underwrite the cost, and we're all going to pay for it. Maybe that's worth that. Anyway.
Now, that's if you have your United Healthcare insurance, is that right?
Oh boy, yikes! I'll leave that alone. My number 3. My number 2. The setting is Butler, Pennsylvania, and the event is the attempted assassination.
Excellent, very good.
The Republican nominee, Donald Trump. By the way, shameless plug, if you want more information about the assassination attempt, you can watch our first episode, which
compares the assassination attempts between Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump.
My co-host, Jeff, does an excellent comparison, speaking of the ammunitions and the ammos and the size of the projectiles and the bullets and the gunpowder. It's all there on the first episode. Anyway, that's my number 2, the assassination attempt, the incredible, absolute bottom falling out of the Secret Service's providing the surveilling situation and offering security to the then nominee. And it seemed pretty obvious. Somebody might want, remember, this was Hitler. This was the threat to democracy. Somebody might want to try to take that guy out. Ought to surround that guy with some Secret Service. And they left the door wide open.
Yeah. And we cover that in some detail in our original podcast. Yeah. So my number 2, Elon Musk escaping the liberal hive mind matrix.
Wow. Okay. So far on the list, favorite one.
So he throws off his support for the liberal movement and for his Democratic sort of candidates that he was supporting prior to that, and he sort of decides that free speech is really important.
Well, he sees it slipping away, as we all did.
That's right.
It's still continuing, but it's been slowed. The slip has been slowed.
And he sees the lack of choice that comes in when you lose free speech and you lose choice of candidate. And he saw that Donald Trump was being kind of muscled by lawfare and by a bunch of other things. And so he decided to step in and an attempt to
Preserve it.
undo some of these harms,
Preserve some of
act as a counterforce to the weight
free
of the
speech,
force,
which is
pushing
another one
against
of
him.
our, right?
That's true. Good
Right?
point.
Sorry.
But what he also has done is become a champion for right-sizing the size of government to have a sustainable size
Are you
of
talking
government.
about another podcast we might do?
There's a pattern
They
forming.
don't know about it. They don't know
There's
what's
a
coming.
pattern forming.
We haven't released it yet.
We haven't.
Anyway, sorry.
That was my number 2.
Okay. And I wanted to mention quickly, and I may get some pushback from this. I'm interested in your comments, good or bad, on this quickly. Even though, bottom line, I think Elon Musk, in a stoic fashion, tried to preserve free speech to some regard in social media by buying X. I think he saw what was going on. Social media was completely one-sided, and he was trying to preserve some form of preserving free speech. And I think that's why whosever money it was, there's a lot of government taxpayer money behind Elon Musk and his wealth, agreed. And he overpaid for X. I don't think there's any question.
I think he paid $44 million.
Billion.
$1 billion, $44 billion.
Yeah.
Carl Icahn, the famous financier, also, he was a Trump supporter in Trump's first candidacy, and he also considered buying it. But his
pockets don't run that deep.
No, his people put a valuation of something around $20 billion, and that 44 was the number to get it sold. You know, it made a big difference.
Right. So now I'm down to my number 1.
You are.
Well, it's the 800,000 million pound gorilla in the room. It's the election. Donald Trump being reelected. Donald Trump rising up in what I think is arguably the most significant political comeback in the history of the country. Somebody who is, I don't mean to be flippant by saying left for dead. They tried to, two people tried to assassinate him, as far as we know. Maybe there's more. And deemed Hitler and deemed, a war criminal, and the lawfare that the barrage, the avalanche of attack that Donald Trump not only survived, but somehow thrives in, and to this day has now been elected president, the redemption. And I love, by the way, that's my number 1, but I love that Trump's statement was, I'm not going to go after people. I'm going to bring the country back. That's my, what's the word I'm looking for? Pay people back, revenge, right? That's
retribution.
Retribution is going to be in me bringing the country back. The world leaders are falling behind him. We should do a podcast on the Trump effect, the economy, stock market, jobs. It's all going to fall into place, and it's already being influenced by Trump having been nominated and elected.
Wow. So
I did say nominated because people weren't nominated that were running against him, but
that's true. That's
he
a
was
good
actually
point.
formally
They
nominated.
That's true. That's a good point.
Sorry.
They didn't even have a choice over who their candidate was going to be.
Right. Yeah. Very weird.
So I want to stress again, we did not have advanced insight into each other's lists. My number 1 most important event of the year is the election of Donald J. Trump.
Nicely done, co-host.
Yeah. So,
we promised we didn't know that.
No, we didn't. We didn't.
You know what? It's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
That's pretty obvious, I think.
So for me, he didn't just defeat Kamala Harris and Tim.
Is going to be way better than mine. It's going to be way better.
No, it won't. It really, I think you did a great job. Concise, compact, and right to the point.
But you've raised it a great point already.
So he had to defeat the Democratic establishment, the Republican establishment, the mainstream media. He had to defeat the lawfare attempt by Department of Justice, Fani Willis at Fulton County prosecutor, who, by the way, the appellate court in Georgia just removed her from those cases, that she is unqualified or disqualified because of her behavior with her
and by the way,
paramour.
An interesting addendum to that whole scenario, very fascinating, that Fani Willis is the district attorney and Scott McAfee, the judge, works for her.
Yeah.
So he's in this incredibly
but this
awkward...
is the appellate court. That moved beyond him. So
but he made that initial ruling, and
he made the initial ruling, and then it was appealed, and the appellate court...
Awkward, unless you don't like your boss.
her.
Then it wouldn't be awkward at all to feel good.
So then we've got Letitia James in New York. Letitia James, New York AG. But that case, that was the civil trial that Trump had a nearly $500 million penalty assessed against him, which I think would reduce down to $420
This
million.
This is the no victims, no
correct.
No crime
It was
committed.
the business practices that he alleged to have done. But that's
overstating his values.
That's still outstanding. Right, but they assessed during that trial, the judge independently assessed the value of Mar-a-Lago at $18 million. But Trump overestimated. Right, this guy's assessing things at some wholesale fire price. If the land had been used as a toxic waste dump, it'd still be worth $18 million.
Apparently, there's a home that's got on an acre or two, or less than that. That's $15 million. It's just a house. Mar-a-Lago is a resort with
huge beachfront.
With
right. It's ridiculous.
Beachfront, it's an insult.
So in addition to
the
Democratic establishment, Republican establishment, mainstream media, lawfare against him, he defeated those people who are supporting the endless warfare industrial complex. And who is that? A lot of defense contractors, a lot of people who are into foreign wars, a lot of the neocons from the 90s and early 2000s. They all want more war. They all want the United States to be involved in as much war as possible because they benefit from the sale of munitions and arms and the division of spoils. In addition, pharmaceutical industry does not like Trump. In addition, the environmental, industrial, and research complex. Trump has a more moderate approach to what constitutes true environmental catastrophism, and he is not willing to ruin the U.S. economy or the Western economy largely for the benefit of certain agendas.
I think it's going to be really fascinating and interesting. You mentioned, Big Pharma and Trump and how Big Pharma feels about Trump. I think the Kennedy appointment is really going to. It's a pushback. But the question is will the lobbyists, will the big pharma lobbyists, will they hold court and be able to prevent Kennedy from really invoking what he's now laid out as his questioning all the testing and all the whole litany of things that Kennedy is professing he's going to do. I think a lot of people agree, everybody but Big Pharma seems to agree, and the lobbyists, that a light needs to be thrown on Big Pharma. What's going on? Back for the opioid crisis, obviously COVID, the whole thing it's been smelling for a while, and I think somebody like Kennedy wants to come in, and I heard a quick little thing about Kennedy that somebody made a joke. That guy doesn't like Kennedy, and they're like, it's because he can do unassisted pull-ups. The guy's in his 60s, and he's doing so.
He's pretty built, pretty
buff. This
This
guy gets nutrition, exercise, sleep. He understands the fundamentals, and he's going to reinvent the whole thing.
There are some people that say he likes eating dogs too. Hey, but this is important. Not only, right, did Trump defeat all these people, but he had to do it in such a way that he also appealed to his core and the rest of the population.
You're talking about his voter base.
He expanded his voter base, right?
Blacks,
he crossed over. Hispanics, all kinds of people now are interested in Trump that weren't interested. Young people.
It's a fact.
It's a fact. Yeah. So this isn't just fighting legally these different groups, but it's also appealing to the population, appealing to potential voters.
Biden thought he was going to bring everybody together, and it didn't work.
And so I went out and did a little research to find the best comparisons I could for political comebacks. And I kind of went throughout the Western world and the United States.
I love this. What'd you find?
And so, some people think that Napoleon is a good comparison. I don't think it's anything like Trump's comparison.
Napoleon did not have Truth Social. So let's be sure about that. Right?
He didn't have Truth Social.
It's a very different time.
But Napoleon, France was not a nation that had a democratic. It had a revolution, and they were moving towards that sort of democratic way. But he was a military leader. He was a dictator. So this is not a good comeback in that sense. We had Churchill. He was in and out of Parliament for 40 plus years in England. Was in World War One as a naval administrator. He did all kinds of
Churchill's
things.
fantastic. But what a
with the
public
military,
figure.
with politics, and so forth. But he's been an ongoing. He had never had
Case study. Right.
That's right. But he was always involved in some form or fashion, either as an executive or as a legislator during that time. We turn to, this is CNN for you. Who's a good comparison? Elliot Spitzer, the disgraced New York governor.
A household name for a long time and now just completely.
And he's got a political comeback. I think he's running as dog catcher. Bill Clinton. It's true, he was impeached.
Depends,
but let's face it.
You mean Bill? It depends on what your definition of the word is. Is Clinton?
Bill Clinton was impeached, but he was able to survive all that. Great. Trump survived 2 impeachments and then an entire several years of a political machine pushing against him.
Except the differences, amongst many differences, Bill Clinton had an affair and lied to the public. And Donald Trump made a phone call. I
don't want to get into the affair business. We don't know, but the issue there is Bill Clinton never lost office in a contested election, and then had to regain office after having getting pushed back by his party, the opposite party, and a set of legal cases and precedents. So what Donald Trump did was extraordinary, and I think it puts him in certainly in the modern world as being the greatest political comeback that we've seen.
Certainly the most significant. And boy, if for a lot of the country, it feels like a breath of fresh air. That's for sure. There's a lot of relief. I think certain parts of the country are feeling quite a bit of a sense of hope,
right,
and joy.
Well, speaking of hope and joy, I'd like to end this podcast by wishing our viewers a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Dig it. We got so much to bring to you guys. We're really looking forward to it all. Appreciate the support. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.